Hey everybody, and welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to take a simple can of black beans right out of our prep pantry, and we're going to turn these things into a pan of delicious fudgy chocolate brownies. Let's get started. Okay, the first step in our black bean brownies is obviously going to be taking a can of black beans. These are a simple can, 15.5 ounce can of cooked black beans. And what I'm going to do now is open them up, take them over to the sink, and rinse them off real good in a strainer. Okay, I've got our rinsed and drained black beans in the food processor. Now what I'm going to do is assemble all of our dry ingredients into a bowl so that when we get to that point we can just dump them in there. So we're going to need 2/3 of a cup of white sugar. Some recipes that I looked at online use maple syrup and other things that, for dietary needs, and feel free to make it your own however you want. Maple syrup, honey, sweeteners and all that kind of stuff. For our purposes here, this is grid down or SHTF brownies, and I do keep white sugar around because we use it for preserving and making jams, etc. White sugar is a very important staple to have in your preparedness pantry. So we've got the sugar in there. Now we're going to take and put in 1/4 of a cup of cocoa powder. Now this is 100% cacao or cocoa powder. It doesn't have milk solids and all that kind of stuff in it like some of the cocoa drinks might have. So this is what you're going to want to use, regular cocoa baking powder. So we're going to use 1/4 of a cup. Make it a little bit heavy. A very full 1/4 of a cup. Make these brownies nice and chocolatey. Okay, now we're going to use 1/2 teaspoon of baking powder. Now I've seen this same recipe used for making chocolate cakes, and it seems like people will just add more baking powder or vary some of the ingredients a little bit for the difference between a brownie and a cake recipe. Okay, now we're going to go with 1/2 teaspoon of salt. And I'm just going to pour this right out of our kitchen dispenser. Works out no problem. And 1/2 teaspoon of salt in there. And that's going to be most of our dry ingredients. Now I'm going to go ahead and add some walnuts into these brownies. I think it's just going to make it a little bit more of a decadent dessert. But of course you could leave that kind of stuff out if you needed to. Okay, now I'm going to add the rest of our wet ingredients into the food processor. And I can tell right now, as is routine for me, that I'm going to be testing the maximum capacity in our food processor here. You could also use a blender for something like this. I think it would work just fine. So I'm going to put 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract in our brownies. The recipe is calling for 3 large eggs at room temperature. I've had these sitting out for a little bit. And it calls for 3 tablespoons of coconut oil, and I've warmed this coconut oil up just a little bit to convert it from its solid state into more of a liquid so that we're getting some accurate measurements here. Okay, so that's our ingredients. We can go ahead and add some of our chocolate chips in after we've blended all this up, and I'm going to reserve some of them to sprinkle on the top while we're baking. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and give these just a quick pull. My thinking is that'll give me just a little bit more room in my processor here so we can add our dry ingredients. Dry ingredients are in. Let's go ahead and blend this until smooth. The model of this channel is plan, prepare, and practice. And one of the reasons that we do these videos like this, not only to show you multiple uses for common pantry and canned goods storage that you can easily put together, is it also stimulates your thinking about other things that might be worth storing. Okay, so we've got our mixture here is pretty smooth. Yep, it looks pretty good, and I think I'm just going to go ahead and add some of the chocolate chips in there now. I'll reserve some of them for the top. I'm just going to stir these in. I did a video a while back on grinding up oats in a blender to make oat flour. That might be a very useful component in a recipe like this also. We'll see how these turn out. I know this batter is going to be very wet compared to you know, cake batters and things like that, but I think they're going to cook up just fine, and we'll see how they turn out here in just a minute. Okay, I've got my oven heating at 350. We're going to go ahead and take this out now and pour it into a well-greased 8x8 pan, and I use some more of our coconut oil to do that also. Alright, I just took these out of the oven and they did cook for 25 minutes. I thought I was going to have to let it go a little bit longer, but as you can see, we have a very tasty looking dish of chocolate brownies here. They smell delicious. I'm going to let them cool now, and as soon as they do that, we'll cut them up and see how they taste. Okay, let's cut these guys up and see how they taste. I certainly don't think that they're overcooked. They seem to be very moist and kind of a fudgy consistency, which is exactly what we wanted for our brownies. Now let's see if we can get one of these out of the pan. Take a look at that. I've cut up and taken a few out of the pan, plated them up here so we can give them a little taste test. You know, I know these recipes are popular in vegan circles and people that have special diets and that type of thing, but that's not why I'm spotlighting them here today. The fact that I was able to take a simple can of black beans out of our emergency food stores, whip them up with some eggs and a few simple dry ingredients, and come up with a delicious dessert like this, I think would be very valuable in a grid down situation or any emergency situation where we're surviving off of our food stores and our preps. Additionally, I did use fresh eggs in this recipe, but I think it would be very doable to use some egg powder and just come up with the equivalent of 3 fresh eggs, and I think it would work out just fine. Let's give these things a taste test. Fudgy black bean brownie, here we go. You know, I'm going to be straight honest here. When I read that you could not tell the difference between black bean brownies and regular brownies, I was pretty skeptical. I figured that you would be able to tell these were made with black beans, have some kind of a bean taste or strange consistency in some way, but these are absolutely delicious. They taste like a regular fudgy chocolatey brownie. I don't believe anybody would be able to tell that these are different from a regular brownie. Hey, thanks for watching today's video. You know, as I've said in the video already, I think it's important that we learn and know the variety of ways that our food preps and things can be used, especially if we're making something like some chocolate brownies or a dessert, which I think would be a very welcome recipe in keeping some normalcy in your home in distressed times. If you like the content that we provided in today's video, be sure to hit that like and subscribe button down below. It does help us build the channel. And as always, remember, get ready so that you and your family can succeed and thrive. Distinguish the difference between a black bean or indistinguishable. But when I read that black bean brownies were so good that you couldn't tell them